Welcome back to another episode of Spiritual Teachers Podcast. With me today is Stephanie Potter. It's an honor to have you on, Stephanie. Thank you for joining today.
Appreciate it. It's an honor to be here for you and your community.
Thank you so much. Yes, and so Stephanie is a spiritual channel and intuitive guide, as well as an intuitive Akashic record reader. So some of the topics we're going to cover is Stephanie's awakening journey, mediumship, and Akashic records and what they are. So that's the plan. We'll see where else spirit takes us today. So I'm excited. Stephanie, would you be open to sharing about how the awakening journey started for you?
For sure. I was always interested in like from the time I was in like maybe the third or fourth grade. My school showed us like a video or talked about was it I think his name was Uri Geller. He could bend a spoon with his mind. And I
Mm-hmm.
just thought that was the coolest thing. And so the next time that I went to the library, I wanted to learn all about telepathy and telekinesis and all of those things. So here I am, a third, fourth, fifth grader, taking out these like really odd books from the library, right? In the
Mm-hmm.
very small section of books
Yeah.
around new age, I guess is what you would say, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then, just always interested. And then when I graduated college, I started listening to books about channeling and mediumship on CDs. That's
Mm.
how old I am.
Right.
And so I listened to like I was interested in all of that and would do it like when I was traveling for work, I would listen or this or that. But I never what I call did the work. So anytime I read a book or listened to something that was like, and now the exercise 1A, I'd be like, skip the page.
Uh-huh.
So really
Uh-huh.
it was just taking in a lot of information, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then in 2018, I had been with the company for 5 years and I got laid off for the first time in my life. And it was like a huge deal for me, just as it is for anybody, especially the first time.
Mm-hmm.
But they gave me severance money. And so I was able to have a little bit of money in the bank that I wouldn't have had before. And so I started doing classes where I had to actually do the work. So, like, I
Mm-hmm.
picked classes where you had to practice, where you had practice partners, whatever it might be. And that's kind of what opened it up. And
Mm-hmm.
I've kind of been just like a curious seeker when it comes to anything metaphysical. So, like, if you were to look at my bookshelf over here, you'd be like, oh, okay, tarot, aliens, you name it, like everything on here,
Mm-hmm.
energy work, astrology, human design, gene keys, just dabbling in a lot of different things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in addition, like any good awakening, I had a really crazy part of my life. I'd say it was about 8 years. I'm coming out of it now, where I had like broke up with a fiance. My dad passed away. I was laid off again. I moved. At one point, I didn't have a job. At one point, I was living in my car. All of the great things that an awakening brings.
Right.
Um,
And
things
the
that bring you to
challenges,
your
right?
knees. Yeah, exactly. The things that really push you and bring you to your knees, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so, how do you, believe in whatever you believe in a higher power to get through those times?
Mm-hmm.
It's not about who we are when things are great. It's about who we are when we're on our knees and we don't know what's next and maybe can't take anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's really what kind of got me leaning into like, what do I believe, as well as just being that curious seeker and continually learning more. That's what really opened me up.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean those parts of life are can be extremely challenging and just for me it was like taking me into those depths of depression and even though I'm like really happy guy, like
Yeah.
very outgoing and very fun, like to go out back then and drink and all that, but like yeah, it took me, like you said, down to my knees into those really dark
Yeah.
places that nobody could do it for me. I had to crawl out of it myself. And so I can totally relate to that. And a question came through, which was, you mentioned some classes that you took and some courses. Was there any that were particularly impactful for you during that time?
For sure. So I think I started with Reiki
Okay.
level one.
Hmm.
And while I knew like hands-on, like physical healing didn't feel like my jam, I was still interested because it really gave me a base on like how to read and understand energy.
Hmm.
And for me, like if we talk about spiritual gifts, or I like to say skills, because everybody has spiritual gifts, literally everyone, whether you choose to use them or not.
Right.
But mine, the one that is the least developed, we'll go with, is clairvoyance. So
Mm.
see, clear seeing, so seeing pictures, colors, auras, any of that.
Hmm.
And so for me, that was just learning how do I read energy without having that be one of my main gifts.
Hmm.
So for many people, we learned that actually about 40% of people, their strongest gift when they first open up or choose to learn to do this work is clairsentience, which means clear feeling. So
Hmm.
whether they're feeling something in their body or they're assessing something that comes through that's like a true feeling, like a physical feeling or an emotion.
Hmm.
And so, I looked at that. I also did 2 classes in Akashic Records. So how to read the Akashic Records and then healing in the Akashic Records.
Okay.
And
Beautiful.
then another one I did that I really loved was called Soul Reading Method with Nikki Novo. And that really took into account a little bit of everything. So it was about how do you work with your guides? How do you learn energetic hygiene? How do you read chakras? They also had a section on the Akashic Records. She does it a little bit differently. And so that was really neat too. And so those programs kind of help me. But what I would also say is there's so much that you can do, even if you can't afford a big program, that you can learn that's out there and available to everybody, which is really wonderful these days.
Hmm. For sure. For sure. So what at one point did you find out about the Akashic Records? Was it in a book? Did somebody tell you about it? Like, how did that journey start for you?
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like when someone tells you about a movie or a book or even just like a subject, and then you hear about it like 4 times over 2 weeks, and you're like, I've never heard about this, and now all of a sudden I've heard about it 4 times.
Hmm.
And that's kind of at first how the Akashic Records appeared for me.
Hmm.
And so I'd say in 2019, I read the book, Linda Howe's book about how to read the Akashic Records. It's considered really like a foundational book.
Hmm.
And I was so excited. I read through it and then I did the practice to open the records and I felt like nothing happened. And so I kind of was like, well, maybe this isn't for me. Like I'm just not, because I was like so excited about it, read the whole book and didn't really feel anything, right, when I went in there. And now I know differently, but they're kind of living in some ignorance. And so I kind of turned and said, well, maybe I don't have spiritual gifts like yet, or maybe I won't have them, but like, what can I teach myself? And so that's when I started learning like astrology and human design because they felt very scientific. So again, ignorantly, I thought you didn't have to be intuitive to do those. So I thought,
Hmm.
well, if, at the very least, if I don't have any gifts, I can teach myself this.
Hmm.
Now I know that there is so much intuition that goes behind human design and astrology and so many other things. But that was me many years ago.
Hmm. Hmm.
But then again, the kind of the Akashic Records came back where again I got laid off again. The universe, me and corporate, I don't know. It's like I do well, I get promoted, but then somehow the universe shifts me in another way. And I think that's kind of what got led me here to open my business. More on that later, but essentially the Akashic Records, same thing happened. I'd be listening to a podcast, it would come up again, again, again. So finally I'm like, okay, let me see if I find a teacher that I resonate with, right? Because when
Hmm.
it comes to spirituality, finding not just the subject that you're interested in, but finding the teacher that like feels good to you. Are they in integrity? Do you like the way they present themselves? Do they have references? And so I found somebody named Brenda Paul and she was amazing. And so I did 2 of her programs. And that's how I started to learn more about like, oh, I can do this. And actually anybody can do this. And I'm also here to say anybody can access their own Akashic record. And
Mm.
so for me, that's kind of what got me more Akashic Records focused.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So now looking back at it, when you had that experience where you opened them up, but you didn't really feel anything or see anything,
Yeah.
what happened now looking back at it, do you think?
Yeah, so I think that I just didn't know how to interpret what was going on. So
Mm.
like for me now, when I open the records and when I first started doing it, I felt like a little bit of pressure on my third eye, like physicality, almost like I was being pulled up a little bit. And then even to this day, I feel a little pressure in my heart, right? Where my heart chakra is.
Mm-hmm.
And so really I probably was just going in and feeling around. And because I didn't have some like psychic openness outburst, like some people when they open the records, they have these incredible experiences. I
Mm-hmm.
can see everything. I'm in the records. I'm here and there. That just wasn't my experience.
Mm-hmm.
And also because clairvoyance isn't one of my gifts. Like my main gifts are claircognizance, meaning I get downloads of information that I wouldn't have known otherwise, clairaudience, clear hearing, and then clairsentience, clear feeling. So since I didn't know how to use those, then it felt like I wasn't getting anything. You know what I mean? Like I was waiting for this like magical experience because then you hear about people on podcasts that are like, I got into the records the first time and I was on different planets and in a library and all of these different things. And that just wasn't the case for me the first time around or the second or third.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's really interesting. I wonder if it had anything to do with like any internal blocks or anything like that. Do you think that has an effect sometimes?
I think so. That and then really just my own ignorance. Like I didn't know, like because what you were seeing people talk about online was so clairvoyantly focused
Mm-hmm.
that like I didn't know to stay in and to start to ask questions or to like, try to write something or try to channel information, that sort of thing. I just didn't know because that wasn't part of it. It was more like, we all have different gifts. They all work different ways. So I didn't have the manual to my gifts yet. I
Mm-hmm.
don't think I still have it, but I'm starting to write a little one.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. For sure, for sure. Beautiful. So, um, just to give people a background and to for those people that aren't familiar with the Akashic Records, can you share what they are and like just some basics about it?
Yeah, yeah. So it can be a little overwhelming, and so stick with me here.
Okay.
The Akashic Records are an energetic library of everything past, present, and future. So anything that has energy, spaces, places, people, events, there's an Akashic record for.
Mm-hmm.
And so the way that we picture it a lot of times to kind of help people understand it is think about it like a library where you can go in and get information out of it. And some
Mm-hmm.
people visually see it like a library, right?
Mm-hmm.
The idea is here when we think about people, particularly, if you believe in reincarnation, it means that our soul comes down to earth and reincarnates over and over again, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like for some people, like if I was to go into like if I wanted to learn information, I'd have to go into think about like a room for your soul
Mm-hmm.
and then find the book matching this current incarnation of you to get information. But if I went into that room, there'd be 100 books from every time you've incarnated. So some people don't believe in reincarnation. I understand that too. So maybe there's just one book,
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Reincarnation was a huge um, moment for me when I started to open myself to that idea and to that belief.
Yeah.
The universe started showing my logical side proof, right?
Yeah.
Quote unquote proof, right? And I remember there was one story that was just undeniable, and I'm getting a little bit of chills, but this story is on YouTube, and it's about this little boy who I think was about 4 years old, and he started telling his parents about how he died in his last life. He
Yeah.
said he shared that it was in World War II. It was on this specific battalion.
Yeah.
He even knew the name of the exact ship, like the
Yeah.
exact plane that he was on, and there was a World War II meeting that was happening of the veterans that were still alive,
Yeah.
his parents took him to that, and they confirmed, those older gentlemen confirmed that there was a man by that name who
Yep.
had been on that plane, who had crashed, or shot down, or however it
Yeah, there's
happened.
many of those stories.
Yeah, and it was so undeniable because it's this little boy having this deep remembrance
Mhm.
from this past lifetime, and yeah, it's really interesting because then my mind starts to think about how there actually isn't any past or present. It's all happening now,
Yeah.
and there is no time. So that gets really psychedelic and trippy to think about.
I
But
have that talk a lot. So, how I explain it to people is that our brain in the 3D, so us humans, we have to see things in a linear way. So,
mhm,
something that happened in 1700, something that's happening in 2025, something that happened at 9 a.m., something that's happening at 5 p.m., because that's how we interpret it.
mhm,
And just like we would say, if you believe in past lives, that, they have happened in, many years prior, right? So maybe 1700, maybe the year 1000, whatever it might be.
mhm,
In reality, the way that we actually have heard more about is that everything is happening at once. So instead of looking at it as life, 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 it's actually all happening at the same time in different circles, almost
mhm,
like a record player with different delineations going around at the same time.
mhm.
That's a bit mind-blowing.
For
So
sure.
I like to say past lives because some people would say like, some sort of like different, timeline life or whatever you would want to say.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's a lot. It gets a little heady.
Yeah, I mean it makes sense to me because I'll meet people sometimes and there's such a deep recognition of that soul of that person even from the moment we meet, you know? And I've had that with, like with romantic partners, I've had that with um, friends, with family, you name it. And it's really like a really deep knowing and a really deep feeling,
Yeah,
and
so
then from both sides.
yeah. So what you bring up is that's actually the real term of soulmates.
Hmm.
So we incarnate, if you believe in reincarnation, in groups where we have these contracts with each other to teach each other different things or to have experiences.
Hmm.
Even our parents might have been our sister in another lifetime, or our brother or our child or whatever it might be. And so somebody that comes into your life and there's like just like this unbelievable feeling. It doesn't mean you may have had a past life, but there also may just be a soul contract there, right? And
Hmm.
so it's like, oh my gosh, it's like, is it namaste where it's like my soul recognizes your
It
soul,
is,
something
yeah.
like
Hmm.
that. Yeah. And you're like, wowza.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really deep. I don't remember exactly where I was or what I was doing, but I remember I had a vision of what my father and I had been in a previous life.
Yeah.
And then I saw a vision of what my father's father was
Mhm.
with him. And it's really interesting because in a past life, my dad had two kids and he left to become a monk and he
Mhm.
just left his family and went into the Himalayas and and so one of those kids was his father in this life,
Interesting.
and what happened in this life was his father abandoned him
Abandoned him. Yes.
when he was really young
Yeah.
and chose a different partner instead of his mom,
Yeah.
my grandma, right? So it was really interesting because it was like very clearly karmic,
Yes.
and I only saw my dad's dad maybe two or three times my whole life, and it
Right.
was really interesting because my dad, it was kind of like a driving force for him, like to prove himself, to be the man that his dad always wanted as a son, and from that perspective, it made sense why his soul would have wanted to clear that karma and to
Yeah.
choose that because it was a huge motivator for him subconsciously and consciously throughout his life so far.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. That comes up a lot in my readings where sometimes I get information about how two people have been connected and why there might be, somebody might say, "Man, I have never been able to get like along with my mother. I don't understand. It's been since I was a kid. I can't think of anything that, has caused this, da 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 da." And sometimes it's like, "Oh, you guys were sisters in a past life and you kind of brought over that." And one thing I like to say and point out about karma is that karma is about where do we want to grow and learn in life as well. So sometimes challenges, but then also gifts. So like when you see a 3-year-old that can play Bach or Beethoven, you know what I mean? So like we do think about karma as like this terrible thing that people think it's like, oh, it's against me, but actually it's challenging you to grow. That's why your soul's here in the 3D. But also know that there are gifts that have been brought over for you. Maybe why you're good at math, or maybe why I'm not good at math,
Hmm.
whatever
Hmm.
it might be. But I do like to remind people that like it's more than just things that you feel like are being used against you.
For sure. Yeah, because there's so many positive karmic experiences, just like you said
But
in your soul cluster, people are constantly supporting and helping you when in previous lives, quote unquote, you could have been doing a lot for them. So
yeah,
yeah, apparently I was my dad's like helper or kind of um like I was kind of young when he was in the Himalayas, and I was like helping him in that lifetime to like have water and the bare minimums that he wanted while he was deep in that meditation. And so in this lifetime he wanted to have a more um, in this world but not of it experience,
yeah,
where it was not just completely
yeah, more
uh,
balanced.
right, like not just completely dissociating and just going for the deep spiritual path. So yeah, it's really interesting for me to look at those
Mhm.
at that in those ways, and spirit has a way of talking to us, right?
Yeah,
Spirit has a way of showing these synchronicities and these alignments that are undeniable. Like a feather just shows up, a white feather shows up in your room when all your windows are closed,
yeah,
or the number sequences will be really clear for at a moment when we're trying to make a decision, and it
yeah.
just gives us that confirmation.
Yeah, and I echo that, and I would also say you have to be open for it, and then also sometimes ask for it. So whether you believe in guides, like soul guides, or angels, or your past loved ones, if you believe they still exist, I believe in all of those.
For sure.
So like they can help you if you ask for help, and so they're consistently when those things show up, it's them trying to give you little reminders that they're there, or also keys to like what you're here to do. We have this great forgetting where we come down here, we don't know why we exist, where we came from, any of that. And
Hmm.
so as our soul remembers and our guides on the other side, I feel like your soul comes up kind of with this game plan, like you would when you're coming down here, and then you're like, okay, but I'm gonna forget everything when I get down there.
Right, right. And to some degree it makes sense, and it's more fun that way,
Yeah,
to like
yeah.
for me at least it is to unravel and find all these little pieces of the puzzle and start to put them together. One of my
Mhm.
buddies, he was actually raised and born in India,
Mhm.
and I don't think he's ever had any shot like vaccines or shots, and he
Mhm.
can remember every single moment of his life from the time he was born.
Wow, that's
And
amazing.
and I do believe that those kind of things make a big impact, especially when we're babies and
Yeah,
start to develop our brain and everything's still, you know, building all the synapses and those kind of things,
yeah,
where all those chemicals, any chemicals, right? Like heavy metals, all those things can make a big impact on the way the brain develops. So for him, yeah, he's one of the few people that I know that can just tap into any moment of his life and tell a
wow.
story from when he was 1 years old or whatnot. And yeah,
I mean, that's a gift in itself.
yeah, it's
Holy
fascinating to
moly.
know that there's people like that out there
Yeah.
that have these amazing gifts. It makes me think of um,
Is it
the
Matthias Stefano? Is that who you're thinking about?
no, it's
Okay.
actually it's a Marvel, the guy who created Marvel comics. Um,
Stanley.
Stan Lee, he created a show where he actually went around the world and found people that had these like physical superpowers,
Yeah.
like telekinesis, like putting huge charges of electricity through their body and being able to, blast it out of their hands and
Yeah.
being able to like bite through metal and all these like really interesting things. And I think about that with the spiritual gifts too. There's all these people that are out there. A lot of them are very humble and very secluded.
Mhm.
A lot of these older yogis and things like that,
For
they
sure.
they keep to themselves and they have these what are called siddhis,
Yeah.
Siddhi. And in India, that's what they call it. And they're like superpowers that start to come online the more we work on ourselves, the more we evolve as our soul evolves and as humans. So,
I'm
um,
reading a book about the Maharishis of India right now.
oh, cool.
So that's it. They talk about, that sort of thing where, they can put their hand through like part of the cave wall, right? Or
Hmm.
they can levitate and these different things where they've just developed gifts that are incredible. But like you said, they keep it, on the down low, so to speak.
Yeah, and during my yogic training in Kundalini yoga, my teacher always emphasized that these are distractions,
Yeah,
that these gifts, especially people that are using them to build a following, to get attention, to try to get people to work with them, that's not the point. These are
right.
just little gifts that come online, and they're not to be given a lot of emphasis and a lot of energy because when that happens, it takes us off the path. And the ego starts to develop more, and we're like, oh, look at this thing I can do you
It's
know?
really about like what is the gift showing us as far as mind over matter and that sort of thing, as opposed to
Hmm.
what you're actually seeing in the physical. It's more about the lesson in what that's physically showing us. But really, we're looking at it as more of like a parable of like, okay, you can levitate. Well, what does that mean for us when we're exploring our brain, especially when you look at the Kundalini tradition?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's really interesting. It's a really interesting thing, and it kind of ties into Jesus
Mm.
and where Jesus traveled from 13 to 33 or to 30, and there are many records around the world of the places where he went. He went to Egypt, Tibet,
Yep.
India, and there's actually people that can take you on a tour through India of all the places that he went and did activate and access these cities like levitation and walking on water and healing people with his hands. Also, we know as Reiki.
I just finished a book called Jesus and the Essenes by
Mm,
Elizabeth Cannon. So she goes back and take that for what it's worth, but about how he was trained with them, and then they also trained and they had people from all over the world, including India. There's a heavily presence between like the sharing of knowledge there. So super interesting.
yeah, yeah, for sure. And you mentioned Mateus Di Stefano,
Yeah,
and
I didn't want to go by without bringing that back up again
for
because
sure,
and so for
yeah.
those of you that don't know him, he can remember his past lives. That's what he's known for. But he's
Hmm.
also, I think, pretty a humble guy. And so I do not know him personally, let me be clear. But I know that that is a gift that he has where he can see like his past lives and help people understand like what we've learned and that sort of thing. So I think that's really interesting too.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, he's got a bunch of programs on YouTube and Gaia,
Mhm.
and there's a lot people could tune into his journey and the different things. He's really connected to Atlantis and Lemuria, and he talks about lifetimes in that. And yeah, it's interesting to listen to him, and it makes me think about how in this lifetime there are parts of those previous lifetimes that start to play out in little ways. At least
Yeah.
for me, that's happened where, in a past lifetime, uh, one of my romantic partners could have been my daughter, and in this lifetime, she's going through an experience where it's activating something inside me that reminds me of like how she got kidnapped in a previous lifetime, by a neighboring tribe or whatever, and like and there's these deep like mornings and experiences that I have had with this, and I know other people that may have a really beautiful life in this lifetime, but then when they tune into those past lifetimes, they're like, "Whoa, there's a lot of stuff to clear here," and I still feel it in my body and in my essence, and so it just takes them for some people into like this whole nother avenue of healing.
For sure. So I think, what I like to tell people is like past lives are great to learn about. I guess everybody's been Cleopatra at some point. But like I think when you learn more about like maybe what comes up for you, it's teaching us something that we need to basically handle in this lifetime, right? Because like we are here, we don't want to live in our past too much, but if something's coming up and coming to the surface from a past life, whether you get a regression or it's something that you remember on your own, it's to help us learn something in this life that we've either brought over or that we're trying to learn. The other person I think that is great that talks about past lives is Ansley McLeod, a Scotsman that lives in the US now.
Mm,
And he talks about the like how old your soul is. So he kind of has like 10 levels, and it's kind of like at each level, kind of what your soul is learning. And I
mm,
think that's really powerful too, because same thing, he talks about healing things in past lives that then help you in this life. And so I think it's really helpful, but I also try to tell people like they get really obsessed about like who they were, where they lived, or where they were from. And so I'd like to remind people I think it's super important, but I think it's based on what do you got going on now.
for sure, for sure. Yeah, because that's the important thing is the moment and how the body's feeling in that moment and what the body's holding because the body is this amazing vessel for us to tune into the parts of ourselves that need to be embodied, need to be integrated, need to be healed and given a little bit extra love in certain aspects potentially.
I like to ask people like, what do you think the most technically advanced piece of technology that we have on this earth? It's the human body.
For
We don't know
sure.
how the thing works.
For
We
sure.
don't, we can't tell you we to this day can't tell you what a thought is or how to find it.
Yeah.
And so like, people forget about how unbelievably incredible that this technology that is our body is actually technology.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
absolutely. I was watching a video about the kidneys the other day
mhm.
and how many tiny, 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 minuscule little pumps are working. And within 5 minutes or 4 minutes, the whole blood, all the blood in the body has been filtered through the kidneys. And like
Does
hundreds
it?
and thousands of little pumps working nonstop. And we don't have to think about it. It's just like just running. All we got to do is feed the vessel and keep our body temple as clean as clear as possible.
That's it. People want to give me like answers around like quantum computers and this and that. And I'm like, no, man, it's the human body. And they're like, oh, you're right.
For sure.
So, and I think beautifully, and I know we'll segue into Akashic Records, but I actually think that's where we're going to see AI come in the most is for medical and understanding the human body and being able to tackle so many kinds of data and like reporting and things that we've done, research. AI is going to come in and be able to really put together that data, read that data, compilate it, and that's going to help us with medical and the physical body going forward, which I think will be so cool. I know that's a little off topic, but just super neat,
Yeah, I mean they're doing it already
right?
where, the AI can recognize a cancerous tumor when it's still like minuscule, like a little bit larger than a cell. And they can, the AI can scan through the image of the lungs or whatever and be like, that right there is going to turn into a tumor if you don't, clear it out. So to me, that's fascinating, and,
Yeah.
and and a really good way of using that technology because I watched some videos the other day of the new platform, the AI platform that creates videos for you. And I mean, it created a bunch of videos that sound and look just like a real video of somebody like interviewing people at Burning Man and stuff. And I'm like, wow, this is taking it to a whole nother level where you know when you're looking at a lot of these Instagram reels and stuff, I can tell that it's like a fake uh, person, or it'll have like six fingers in the video or whatever, and it's pretty obvious. But with this new one, it's next level. I forgot what it's called, but yeah, there's pros and cons for sure to AI.
Absolutely. So, what's interesting, and I'll use this to segue back to Akashic Records, just like one of the things I tell people, like when you're using AI, you have to be really specific about the questions you ask. Like, because if you kind of ask something that's really generic, you're going to get generic back.
For
And
sure.
that's actually how we approach the Akashic Records too. And so people
Mm,
understand that a little bit too when we talk about asking questions in the records because a lot of times they will not a lot of times, they won't give you a yes or no question. And if you ask something really broad, that's kind of the answer that you'll get back. So that's
okay.
one of the reasons I bring up AI because I think it's an interesting way for me to explain, something so quantitative to something so qualitative like the records, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's a really great way to look at it for sure. And then it brings up the question of like, what does it look like for you, and how was it in the beginning for you when you first started accessing them? I know you mentioned you're not as visual, so what was it like? Like, did you feel, hear, how did it unfold for you?
Yeah, so when I first started, I would get into the records. Kind of, I use a like an access prayer, which is something that was like handed down from my teacher. But for some people, they can use an intention. They can find a public prayer. They can, however you want to do it. Sometimes they visually will do a guided like meditation to get there. So many different ways. But I would essentially, it felt like I was like pulling down information. So it would just be like they'd give me like a word or an idea. And so I'd be doing like not readings, but practice readings for people. And I'd be like, okay, so I get the feeling like you're going on a trip. This is something that might come up. Or sometimes they would direct me. I'd be in my house and they'd have me looking at my bar. And then I'd get the idea, oh, this person just stopped drinking. And so I'd say,
Mm,
did you just stop drinking? Because it feels like da 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 da. And so I was kind of getting together these kind of pieces, but it felt like I was really pulling it down, right? And so that was burning a lot of energy. So in order to access the Akashic records or to do any kind of mediumship, we have to increase our frequency and vibration, and then it kind of has to meet us, right?
right.
And so I, wasn't able, I was kind of burning out basically. And so about a year and a half into it, I learned to start basically channel more. So I was doing like automatic writing. And so I would go in and allow myself to just kind of sit for a second and then allow myself to channel what was coming through.
Hmm.
And so now when I do my readings, that's actually the first part of it. So like if we were to have set up a reading, you would have given me your full name and permission to go into your record. And before we meet, I will sit down and I will do all my energetic protection and I will say my prayer and I will go in. And so I'm going into your record. And actually, at that point, I'm speaking to your soul or your higher self.
Hmm.
And so then I am just writing automatic writing down like paragraphs, basically. And I do it for about 30 minutes just to maintain. And then I'll close your record. And I might do that anytime up until we meet. And then we would get together, we'd sit down, and we'd open your record with the two of us there, right? So you
Mm,
could feel it. And so you could feel the energy of being in your own record. And I would review the download that came through. And what I would have had you do before we sat down is physically write out three questions.
mm,
And don't give them to me, but it's the act of physically writing them down. And so then when we sit to go down over the download, 90% of the time I've actually answered your questions in the download without having ever met you or talked to you, which is amazing.
hmm.
Also able, what I then do is I channel. And so I'm able to talk to your spirit guides, sometimes your loved ones that have passed over, and sometimes your higher self then. But usually the first part, the download is kind of like big picture. If your soul could tell you anything right now to make you feel happier, healthier, to be excited about your life, to all of those things. That's kind of what comes through big picture. But then when you ask your questions, which are usually going to be like more 3D, like what's going on? How can I learn more about this? Whatever it might be, your spirit guides, your loved ones that have passed, angels, whatever you insert your beliefs here. But think about the people that are with you more day to day.
Hmm.
And I say people sparingly, energies
Hmm.
they're really funny and they say some funny stuff. And so then I channel those answers, and we kind of go through each of those. And then at the end of the reading, we close your record. And so that's kind of how my readings have changed because before we would have gotten on, opened your record, and I would have just been trying to pull down information.
Okay.
But now it's definitely changed when I do the automatic writing part. And I also feel like I'm able to tune in more straight up to somebody's higher self or their soul. Again, insert your beliefs here,
Hmm.
because I'm literally getting word for word. They'll also give me like examples. So they'll have me explain something and then, kind of I'll put in an example or like to learn more or refer you to other different, whether it's therapy or practitioners or subjects, things like that comes through as well. So
Okay.
sometimes it feels a little bit woo. I always say sliding scale of woo,
Right.
whatever you want to believe.
Right.
Um, and then just some really practical, super things for me. I always say is like I want you to feel seen on a soul level, and bring through healing, hope, and excitement about your future, right? As well as clarity, right? Because
Hmm.
sometimes we just need somebody that we don't even know to tell us something that's been in our heart for 6 months.
For sure, for sure. That's really beautiful. And it brings up the question, um, what, you mentioned guides,
Mhm.
and for those people that are listening and trying to connect with their guides, do you have any tools or any suggestions for those people? And then follow-up question is, what kind of guides have you personally worked with and seen for people?
So you're not going to like my answer, at least most people aren't. It's very much about meditation. So I will say two things. One, I think if you want to interact with your guides more, whatever your beliefs are, you can talk to them out loud.
Hmm.
Times for some things they can't help you unless you ask for help.
For
So
sure.
it can be, help in getting through a difficult thing at work or dealing with a difficult relationship in your life or even an event, whatever it might be. That's the easiest of the options there is just talk to them, right?
Hmm.
But to get to know them more, it's going to be more about meditation. And so one of the things that I think meditation gets really like scary because everybody's tried to like they know how good it is for you and they're like, "Oh, I've tried to close my eyes and sit in a quiet room and like my brain just kept going and I couldn't do it." And I'm like, okay, agreed. Like, unless you were a monk in the Himalayas or like your dad in a past life, it's probably very hard for humans nowadays to sit and just clear your mind, right? Because it's actually not about clearing your mind, it's allowing those thoughts to come up and then picture them moving out
Hmm.
and do that until you can get to like kind of a clear space.
Hmm.
And so, what I kind of tell people is that there are so many different kinds of meditation, and you know that with Kundalini,
Hmm.
whether it's chanting or guided or light language, breath work, there's so many different kinds. And so what I like to do is on my website, actually, I have kind of a PDF that you can download that has all these different kinds of meditation, but then also has free meditations. They're not mine. They're linked to Insight Timer. And
Hmm.
so you can kind of figure out which one might work for you. I'm also working on a quiz that would help too. But big
Nice.
picture, if you go somewhere like an Insight Timer that is a free app, you could write down guided, spirit guide meditation, and so many will pull up. And so a lot of times it's about going in and just finding a space where you can allow them to come in and like being patient with it, right? It's going to take some time. They might just show up as a color first. It might just be a feeling you get warm all of a sudden.
Hmm.
It's something that you kind of have to stick with and keep coming back as a practice because to some degree, they want to make you work for it.
Right.
Like in the days where we know we have so much information at our fingertips, spiritual gifts, and even working with your spirit guides is something that you've got to show up for ongoing.
Hmm.
And so I don't want to like, make sure I don't want to point anybody to not feel like they can't do it. Everybody can absolutely do it. I'm just
Hmm.
saying don't give up if it doesn't happen the first time. For me, there are a few that I've kind of been pointed out to me from having other readings. And so I kind of know them. But they come in to work with you for different things. So people usually have 3 to 5 or more guides. Some may come in your whole life. You have a guide that's with you your whole life. And there might be some that come in for a particular time or for a particular reason.
Hmm.
So it's kind of neat to know that you have that team, and then learning like to connect with them and to know who to connect with. So I've got somebody that I work with that when I do readings, he's like my protection. So he's the one that like if I'm going to do mediumship, somebody like a soul for somebody that has passed shows up, he lets them in the door. Right.
Hmm.
If they're good, right? Like he lets them, meaning like, do I have enough energy in me to be able to channel them, basically,
Hmm.
not if they're good or bad. Nobody's good or bad.
Hmm.
But it's basically like he's the one that protects me and my energy and kind of does that. I've got a guide that works with me when I do channeling specifically or any kind of healing work. I've got another guide that's come in that's teaching me like more about self-love, and self-worth.
Mm-hmm.
So things like that.
Okay.
So the good news is everybody has guides. They're usually quite entertaining because they see and know everything about you.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say is majority of them are people that have not incarnated in this lifetime. So like sometimes you might have family members that are always around, that sort of thing. 9 times out of 10, they're not going to be one of your guides. It doesn't mean they can't be.
Mm-hmm.
It means that they're still around in your life, but your guides are usually like people that you've incarnated with in other lifetimes.
I see. Okay. And in terms of like what kind of guides? You mentioned angels. I know that there's some of my teachers have shared with me that they have almost like a reptilian type of guide. I know there's gargoyle type of guides. There's fairy guides. There's um, different ascended masters. Which can you share some of the ones that you've seen when you tap into people's
Yeah.
journey with
So
Akashic Records?
for sure. So, a lot of times I don't like see their guides specifically unless they want to be seen. Again, I think it has to do with clairvoyance not being like, for some people, once in a while, I will see the guide and be like, they kind of look like this, and that person will be like, oh my God, I did see them in a meditation. You know what I mean? Kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I would say like for me, the ones that I know like that are around me are tied to like I know I have a Black Panther that is like again kind of a protection situation.
Mm-hmm.
And then people from like kind of different times. So I have one from a past life that was my sister. We were in the Lakota tribe in South Dakota. So
Mm-hmm.
like things in the 1800s, things like that. So like kind of passed on.
Mm-hmm.
But I also know I have, we all have an angel. So like an angel assigned to us from birth to death. So I know mine presents in a female. Usually angels are androgynous, so you can look at it that way. But for
Mm-hmm.
a long time, I just saw her as light. I had
Mm-hmm.
no idea that it was a him or her. And so for me, it matters less about like what their name is. I need something to like kind of understand them. So like, is it a color? Is it a shape or a format? That sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, all shapes and sizes, all different things from all different realms, elementals, that sort of thing. One of the things that comes through a lot in readings for people is like if they are tied to like they are very tied to the earth. So I'll see things that like the wind, the water, the rain, things like that.
Mm.
Sometimes I'll like if I pick up a frequency, meaning like they're very tied to angels, right? There's an angelic frequency there.
Mm-hmm.
All kinds of different things that kind of come through, sometimes galactic. I just did a reading where a friend's son, he is still living, I should say, but information came through around him being really tied to the Arcturians.
Mm-hmm.
And so it just kind of depends on how open the person is, and then the information that comes through is like, what do you need to hear the most right now? So
Mm-hmm.
it's like we could do a reading today, and it's like this is what your soul wants to tell you, and your guides want to tell you today. But if we talk in a month, it might be a little bit different.
Mm.
Generally, the big picture things they're asking you to work on, or like wanting to like help you change to better your life, they're going to take a lot of time. So from month to month, it may not be, but your guides, they will say different things because it's a month later and they've got things to say.
Mm. That makes sense. Yeah, and it seems that from your experience, does it seem like certain guides come online at different parts of the people's journey?
Yeah, that's for sure what I've learned. Like for me, like getting into like starting kind of my own business, and like really stepping into like my worth around doing this and like having a business, speaking for the Akashic Records, doing readings with people, things like that. I have a guide that's really helped me with that. I, would say personally, I don't sit and like work with my guides probably as much as I should, but I know that she's there.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's kind of like as I channel, sometimes I will ask for help. And so for me, when I go into my records, I will channel and I say, I'd really like to talk to like my father's past. So sometimes I'll channel my dad, and so I will get a message straight from him. But a lot of times I really will just open it up to my school of guides and say, what do I need to know most right now?
Mm.
And that will come through a good bit because it's helpful to know, okay, this is what I should be focused on right now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's beautiful. So, the first time that you connected with your angel, the light that you mentioned, right? Can you share how that opened up for you? Because I know a lot of people are really looking to connect with angels in particular. That's one of the things that I believe is kind of across the board, any religion, any view on life, angels are kind of, very looked at in a very positive light. They're here in so many ways to support us, and for those people that want to connect with their angelic guide or guides or school of guides that are angelic, what was it like for you the first couple of times?
Yeah, so for me, it was like I didn't even know that they were an angel. I just saw this like bright ball of light. And so I would be doing like a guided meditation where someone was walking me through and I'm picturing like a house or I'm walking through the jungle, like whatever that might be. But I would always see this bright ball of light next to me. Or I'd be doing like some of those like meet your spirit guides. But then it was like, this bright ball of light. And so until someone actually told me, oh, this is your angel because there are other balls of light that may not be angels.
Hmm.
But what I like to remind people is that angels have never been corporal, like they've never incarnated on this earth. They're very high dimensional, so they have lots of like very fast vibration. So when I check into somebody and there's an angel around, or they have angel-like energy, I'm talking quickly and I'm like like very speedy, right?
Hmm.
The other thing I know about angels is they just are pure love. No matter where you're at in your life, no matter how many things you feel like you've done wrong or challenges you've faced, you've never been alone. They've always been there with you and they will always be with you.
Yeah.
And if you ask specifically to work with them or ask for their help or ask them to give you synchronicities and signs, like they will show up for you.
Hmm.
Some people might think that's a little wackadoo, but it's really not.
Hmm.
The thing that to remember is that, like, again, no matter who you are, you're always on your walk and they will always be there with nothing but love for you, no matter how challenging or where you are coming from. Like with those times we've talked about being on your knees or
Hmm.
feeling like, you're really messed up or you did something wrong or whatever, they have nothing but love for you always. And so I find that really, really powerful.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah. For me, I think it was a little bit different because I set a really strong intention for wanting to connect with my angels,
Mhm.
and specifically my guardian angel. And she actually appeared to me in the physical, and it was a ball of light, like a blue ball of light, and
Yep.
then from it, through a series of events that I've talked about in a previous podcast, the light opened up, and this angelic, like winged being with like all this sacred geometry, like the flower of life
Yep.
with rainbow colors streaming through, and she, through telepathy, she told me her name, and what she was here to do, and I looked her up, and she actually turned out to be um, one of the one of the Greek goddesses in charge of um, the twin flame journey. So it was really interesting.
Yeah, a lot of times if you ask for a name, they'll give you one. A lot of times it might be something really simple.
Hmm.
Because honestly, we can't pronounce Aramaic and probably like the whatever light language their name actually is.
Hmm.
So a lot of times if you like, I would just let people know if you ask for a name and you get a very simple name back, like have no fear. It's just they're giving you something so that you can assign something to them because like in no way can we probably pronounce what their name actually is.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I always think that that's always wonderful. And there are people that like just feel really drawn to angels. And so that's why they're like one of the biggest words. Like if you invite them in, they will show up for you.
Hmm.
You have to just be open to it. And like I said, keep showing up and so will they.
Yeah, and just for from my own experience, it doesn't have to be anything like a super long ceremony. Just for me, when I'm working with in my meditation and working with Hape, I will afterwards connect with the angels, and I will say, um, you know, thank you for just sending them love. I receive the love back from them, and then I send that love out to the people that I care about, the world, the animals, and all the people and beings of the earth, and I think that it can be just as simple as that, like a awareness of, hey, I see you guys, I love you guys, thank you for being here with me, and then from there the relationship can build, and deeper questions can be asked, like, can you please align me with the people and the places and the experiences that are going to bring in more funds so that I can pay my bills, or
Yeah.
manifest this, whatever it is that you're trying to call in. And that's just an example. You can ask them for so many other things, like to help align you with people that are going to help heal a heartache or a part of our, trauma or whatever it is. They're really here to support us, and
Yeah.
it's not a woo-woo thing, because it can be really profound, the ways that the openings happen and the people that come in as soon as we ask.
And when we talk about like potentially seeing them visually or seeing them in your mind's eye, they're going to come through with like whatever your belief system is.
Hmm.
So like if sacred geometry is powerful for you and they can attach to that, they will absolutely bring that through because they knew that you understood that.
Hmm.
Not a lot of people understand sacred geometry or are familiar with it, but they might understand maybe how Christianity has defined an angel. And so they might come in with the big white, androgynous with the big white, that sort of thing.
Hmm.
And so that I like to tell people like like spirit will come through with like the bias of your beliefs.
For sure.
Because they want you to feel as comfortable as possible. So it's not a scary situation. Same thing with your guides, and anything metaphysical as far as that goes. It really has to do with like what are your beliefs and what's going to make you the most calm.
Yeah, and one of my teachers, my Reiki master, once told me, she said, you can always ask your guardians and your guides to come cloaked if
Mhm.
they are, if you're a very visual person and they may look a certain way that may be a little bit off-putting or a little scary looking, right? Like you can always ask them to come cloaked, and then talk to them that way.
Yeah. I mean, most of the time, even if they like have one form that would scare you or whatever, I don't think I've never even experienced that. So they make, like you said, when they initially introduce themselves to you, they may look one way, but then maybe they are able to show a little bit more of themselves once you're kind of a little bit deeper, again, sliding scale of woo, when you're
Right,
further along, right?
right. Yeah, for sure. For sure. And I think what's interesting is, like, um, as a kid, I would be very connected to certain, um, like, beings, right? Like, I remember, as a kid there was, like a clay art project that we were making, and I really wanted to make a gargoyle. I just thought gargoyles were really powerful and really interesting, because they're on churches around the world, and they're known as these protectors. And I remember when I had my awakening, my these beings came and would land. I would hear them landing on my roof, and eventually I was, it was a little nerve-wracking, like I'm in this mountain house, and somebody's walking on the roof, and so I started, eventually I came to a point where I ask them telepathically, like, what's our relationship here? Are we friends? What's going on? And they were like, we're not your friends, we're your guardian, like, we're here to guard you. We're
Yeah.
not we're That's kind of like our contract. We're like security guards almost, where we're just here, we're making sure you're safe. And especially at a time like that, when I didn't know what was going on, and it made a lot of sense. And then many years later, I was, um, sitting in a sweat lodge, and these teenagers came in and sat in the sweat lodge with us, that were tending the fire, and there was four or five of them, and one of them saw the gargoyle beings come in and sit behind me. One of them actually um, felt them, and one of them like felt the presence and the energy. So it was really interesting because it was really reaffirming of how you said like we're never alone, even in these like lower vibrations of fear and things like that. We still have our guardians and the guides that are going to show up depending on our frequency.
For sure. And, our loved ones, when we talk about mediumship, I do some mediumship when it comes to healing in the record. So if there's somebody that, if we're doing a reading, we're talking about somebody, sometimes I can feel it two ways. One, the spirit actually shows up and I can feel them in my body. So clairsentiently, I can feel there's a spirit in the room. I can start to get some connection. And so sometimes that's helpful in a reading if it has to do with healing for that person at that time. Sometimes the other way I can connect is their connected record, right? So if it's your grandmother, your father, somebody that was connected to you, sometimes I can kind of say their full name and then download information from them, from their soul. And so that only comes through in a reading if it's something that somebody needs.
Hmm.
However, there's a medium that I work with here in Atlanta. She's wonderful. And she's able to give you like, I mean, the best medium I've ever seen in my life, like better than people on TV. But basically, she's able to bring through people and they're from my, like that have passed in my family, which is many. And they give me things that tell me that they're around me every day. So my
Mm.
dad's asking about a plant that I got, specifically, he told me exactly what kind of plant it was, didn't have any other one is able to talk about it. Another, relative that had passed is talking about my cat that lays on his back with his legs up in the air and the this and the that. And that's just stuff that like there's no way because they never met that cat. They passed years, you know what I mean? Or things like that. And so I kind of laughed because I was like, okay, I'm loving to talk to my dad, but really you're going to spend this time telling me about a plant that I just bought?
Right,
Like you don't have anything else to tell me, but it's really about like showing, I mean, there was obviously more to say, but that was
right.
kind of the first thing that came up and I kind of laughed. And it's like just reaffirming that they're still around you, that they're still part of your life. They're just in a different plane.
Yeah, that was really beautiful. Thank you for sharing that because I could really feel, you know, the truth in that, and my, I got a little emotional even thinking about that because sometimes I wonder like if my mom's around and she sees my life, and she passed away 5 years ago, so it's very reassuring, and it feels like truth to me to know that she's around, and you
Yeah,
know,
he's still a part of your life.
she's seeing the new pets that we're getting and the cool stuff.
I also like to talk about it in terms of love, right? And
Yeah,
so it's like when you say, I loved, my dad who passed. Well, actually, I love him presently.
right.
Like he is just on a different plane. His energy is still around, And so it's like my love for him doesn't just stop. So I don't say I loved him. It's I
Hmm.
love him. You know what I
Right.
mean? We have definitely a different relationship now.
Hmm.
I laugh. I call him my momager. So he's on the other side, and like he's kind of my momager from the other side, even though he's
Uh-huh.
my dad. Because on this plane, he was kind of a wonderful man, but he was not, down with like, any sliding scale of blue, so to speak, right?
Hmm.
He was very much, kind of scientific black and white thinker. I don't think he would have like ruled anything out, but I would say that this would not have been maybe what he pictured me doing
For
with some
sure.
of my life. Now he's like, I got a daughter that I could still talk to on the other side. This is amazing. You know what I mean? And so, but he had come through before and he basically said, like I would not have been able to help you even on the 3D plane if I was still alive, the way that I can help you from the other side now. And so that just again shows like how much the people that we love, we really don't lose them. With mediumship, that was the thing that I was so interested in when I had that kind of beginning of that when I graduated college and was learning and listening, God, I wanted to be a medium so badly because I could see the people that really can do it, how much they can heal somebody.
Hmm.
Because there are times where you can go to talk therapy for 3 years and maybe get some sort of healing, because I love talk therapy, I do it. But you can go to a medium for an hour that can tell you some truth about somebody that you love that's passed over, and it can heal something in your body emotionally, physically, mentally, spiritually that you would not have gotten any other way. And so I think one day I probably will have more mediumship. But right now they're kind of like one thing at a time. You know what I
Right.
mean? But
Right.
I do believe that mediums that really, are who they say they are and that are here for the better, that sometimes that those kind of sessions can heal something from somebody that no other thing could. And so, we love the people that we love in our lives, and when we lose them, our culture doesn't really know how to deal with death. We just kind of like keep going, you know what I
Hmm.
mean? And so like we don't have a lot of ritual to even, to like I guess in the US, like we don't really celebrate people that die. It's just like they die and then it's like we move on.
Hmm.
And in other countries, they have so many more ritual and so many beautiful practices to celebrate people passing. And I use celebrate as a word purposely, because it's saying like, okay, they've ended their journey here and now they're in somewhere beautiful as well. And I know that can hurt somebody that's going through grief. I'm going through grief myself, but I choose to believe it that way. And so, again, in the US, since we don't really have a lot, we don't even know how to talk to people when someone's passed, right? People
Hmm.
say really weird shit, and you're like, okay, you've clearly never had somebody that's close to you that's passed because you wouldn't tell me, you wouldn't say what you just said. I know you're
Right.
trying to feel better, but and so I guess that's more to just say that sometimes working with a medium can really heal someone's heart, in a way that it couldn't for otherwise.
For sure. For sure. Yeah, and you mentioned beliefs, and I think that beliefs, and we've mentioned it a few times so far, but I think that beliefs really shape everything. And there's techniques to and different modalities to modify and clear out old beliefs and old belief patterns that a lot of times are just kind of running the show for a lot of people out there. And it's kind of like a voicemail that just keeps playing over and over again, and it's not being deleted when it's like from high school and you're an adult now and you don't need to tell people what's up, where's the party at, leave a voicemail. It's like that's outdated. Let's update it. And so yeah, it's really interesting because there's techniques like theta healing. Have you heard of that?
I've heard of that healing for sure. What I was going to share is that one of the like common things that I talk about in my readings that comes up for people is talking about what is your truth with a capital T.
Right.
And so that is about like getting to know who you are. And so one of the things that like it often shows up is like, who would you be and what would you want if you were not a brother, a son, a husband, a boyfriend, if you didn't grow up in your family, if you didn't grow up in your area, if you didn't grow up in your culture, if you didn't whatever, who are you at your core today? So
Hmm.
let's take off all these identities that we find. So for me, it's, I'm a sister, I'm a daughter, I'm a single person right now. I, grew up where I grew up. I grew up in my family, like taking off all these different things, right? This is what I do for work. This is what I think I need to be, blah, blah, blah. At your core, who are you and what do you want with your life?
Hmm.
We almost never know that, right?
Hmm.
We're told like we kind of are told like this is what it means to be a sister. This is what it means to be a friend. This is what it means to be, a electrical engineer, whatever it might be. And so really getting to the core of who you are and what you want for yourself, it takes some time. And I think what people is we get so far from that, right? That's our soul and who we are and what we want to do in this incarnation. But because we have all those layers on, a lot of times people start to have like anxiety and they can't understand why. And it's a lot of times two different things. One, it is that they have strayed from really who they are at their core and they don't know that person because
Hmm.
they've had so many layers, right? And that causes anxiety.
Hmm.
The other thing is that they are in their head so much and not in their body. So
Hmm.
their body is trying to tell them something, right? Their body has infinite knowledge. It's actually smarter than your ego and your head because you've got your heart and your gut and your nervous system, and the toroidal field that comes from your heart. But because people don't get into their bodies that much, when the body's trying to tell you something and the head's not listening or not going into the body, that also causes anxiety. And so that comes up for people in readings a lot as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I think those are huge. Those are really huge reasons for anxiety and reasons that, and when you talk about those layers, it's like how deep do you want to go and
Exactly.
what you know, it brings up the question of purpose, right? Like some people think that it's just one thing and that we need to find this one thing that we need to be doing, right? And I had this conversation a couple of weeks ago with someone where it's like purpose is not one thing. It's a accumulation of things that just continues to evolve and grow and expand. So like, you know, my purpose today could just be to hold space for one of my buddies on the phone who's going through something with his previous partner that they split. I'm just holding space for him to share. And then tomorrow, my purpose might be to go feed the houseless, or to go and read a certain book, that's going to lead to the next thing. And there are certain things that the soul calls to and calls forward inside of us, like a deep knowing of like, oh, I need to be doing this. Like there's been some moments in my life where I've tried something like Kundalini yoga, for example, where first time I tried it, I was like, I know I have to teach this. I
Yeah.
know this is important for me and for my own practice, and this is exactly what I've been calling in and quote unquote, right? So,
You had opened the space to call something in, right? And
right,
so for a lot of people, they're just going on auto, right? Every day, just pushing through it, and they're not listening to themselves, their heart, their soul, their body. They're just letting the ego in their head, that very toxic masculine that's just kind of driving everything. And so when they kind of back out of that, they get a little more balanced in their divine masculine, divine feminine. They start to listen and to be able to follow those things. I
for
agree.
sure.
Purpose sounds like a one place, a one-time destination.
Hmm.
And so really I look at it more of like, what is the mission? Where are you driving to? And there are purposeful things.
Hmm.
But again, our soul is here to learn so much. So it's kind of like, what was that plan I came up with my spirit guides before I incarnated? What did
Right.
I come down here to learn? And it's going to be more than one thing for
Hmm.
sure. But I think that getting back into your heart and kind of figuring out who was I before all those layers happened, or inner child.
Hmm.
Let me talk to my 9 year old that wasn't worried about healthcare and growing up in, whatever it might be. And so kind of going back to that and saying, okay, so when I was a 9 year old, what did I want to do? What makes me happy? Sometimes things that come up for people in readings as well is about like what makes you have little kid excitement as
Right.
an adult. How do you get that excitement back of that time in your life where you felt free, excited, and joy? I will tell you what mine was recently. I've done some mission work to Cambodia. And when I had sat down and thought about like, when's the last time you felt little kid excitement, like night before Christmas or like whatever it is that you would get excited about? Mine was shooting Cambodian orphanages at laser tag.
Oh,
We had taken
nice.
these kids to a mall, which they didn't even know what a mall was, obviously, Cambodian orphans, and like taught them to play like laser tag and took them to Burger King and everything like that. But running around, having good time, screaming, playing, and having, and I know that's an extreme example, but I'm like, oh, that made me really feel like little kid excited and joy.
Hmm.
And as adults, when we have so many layers on, it's really hard to hit that joy point, right? If this is everyday normality, this is the low and this is the high, we're somewhere in between. And
Hmm.
so as kids, though, we're like this, right?
Right, right.
How do I get that back, right? How do I get that joy? It's like, I feel like I should be happy, but I'm not really happy. And it's because you're not having those spurts of joy. So
Hmm.
sometimes going back to like, what makes my little kid excited? You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Another
Yeah.
thing I think is like before a trip, like I love to travel. I went to Japan last year and like going to Japan, I just tried to stay in like childlike wonder. And then so that comes up a lot and for readings for people as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really important to come back to that inner child and really like love on that little boy or little girl inside, right? And for me, it's been interesting because I'll actually listen to songs from my
Mhm.
childhood
Yeah.
and think about the memories of, what was going on when I would listen to that song. I also really like to have like nostalgic toys.
Yeah.
because I have a mall at a booth at the antique mall here where I sell items, and so I use that as an excuse to buy
Yeah.
vintage toys and connect with them and be like, oh, okay, like this really connects me back to this time when I was playing that, and there's like all these little openings that start to happen in my memory and in my
Right.
mind, and it becomes a really fun and exciting, beautiful journey. And it makes me think about what Bashar says. It's like follow your highest excitement, and that leads you to the next thing, to the next thing, and then. But for me, it's on adding on top of that layer of like, how can I be of service, selfless service today? And because there's two paths. There's the service to self, and then there's the service to others, and they're very different. There can be some overlap, but the service to others really opens up a different avenue of joy and excitement, because it's not about how much money I made or how many likes or how many, like, these things that are quote unquote valuable nowadays, right? It's actually like feeling the excitement and the appreciation of somebody else that you just selflessly served without any anticipation of how they're going to give to you.
And that brings up like the bigger picture of what I think we see like kind of the world moving towards, and I know I'm personally working on is like how do I do things that are in alignment of love, right? Because we roll everything back to love or fear.
Hmm.
And so it's like when you're doing things that are truly in alignment with who you are, but from a place of love and not a place of stress or likes or analysis or this or that,
Hmm.
like there's a totally different feeling for that, right?
Hmm.
And a lot of times that is service to others. And so to me, when I roll back, like I think about like, oh wow, I really did that because I felt like I had to, or because I had to get so many this or that. And so now I'm trying to be very aligned in my business around like not just doing something because that's what every other person that reads the Akashic Records does, or even like in corporate, like, okay, am I doing this? Like, what is the intention behind it? And is it from love or fear?
Hmm. For sure. For sure. Yeah, it always comes down to, I don't say always often, but it always
Yeah.
comes down to love and fear. I really believe that when you trickle everything down, every emotion, every experience, what did I choose in that moment? Was it love or was it fear? And that really like can be a fork in the road, and the people that choose fear, they're just on a little detour until they choose love again, and then they're back on
And
the
that
road.
sounds like so crazy to be like, oh, I chose fear. No, it's just that was the program that's been written in you for so long. I
Hmm.
did it because I was afraid that I was going to disappoint my whatever, or because I was trying to be in this identity, or because I thought this is what it has to be, or else I'm going to be judged, or this is going to happen. Those are examples of fear, not like, oh, I'm sitting here shaking my boots and I'm doing things out of fear. It's these are the things that are written in all those layers. What did culture tell you? What did the person in high school that yelled at you tell you? What did whatever it is?
Hmm.
And so by getting closer to that heart-centered person and who you are, that inner child, then you can start to learn to do things out of love. But for a lot of people, it's just starting to identify like, oh, I did that because I thought that that's what it meant to be a good daughter.
Hmm.
Or that's what I thought because it's like, oh, I'm not a good significant other to someone.
Hmm.
If I don't, like, I've got to do it this way. Well, okay, well, how could you do the same thing but from a place of love?
For sure.
Think about
Yeah.
that all day.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, uh, there's so many moments throughout the day when we can choose love or fear. And for me, I found like those really difficult conversations with people. Let's say like there was an argument or a conflict. Those difficult conversations are one of those forks in the road where it's like, okay, I can choose
Yeah.
to avoid this conversation and choose fear of like, oh, maybe this person is gonna, maybe it'll get worse from this conversation or whatever the mind can make up. But then when we actually lean into these experiences, the the and choose love, right? Then a lot of times, a really large percentage of the times, it comes out way better, and then there's this huge clearing of energy between the people, and then that's almost like a dissolving of the karma, a dissolving and a clearing that just opens way more up in our life on every aspect, not just like that was impacted, that thing was impacting my relationship with my girlfriend, with my father, with all these people, because subconsciously something in me was chitter chatting about, okay, this still needs to happen. When are you going to do this? You know?
Or like even the way you handle it, right? Because as much as it might be someone's fault, we also have to look at ourselves and
Hmm.
like, wow, I really did come at that from a place of fear. The way that I spoke or my intention, and I didn't mean it that way, but it triggered something in me. And so it's like finding that heart base, that center place to approach things. Totally agree.
For sure, for sure. Yeah, and and to bring it back a little bit to the Akashic Records, I had mentioned to you one of my buddy's experiences, which is really fascinating to me. When he would take DMT, sometimes he would, with his eyes open, he would see like an Akashic Record library around the individual,
Yeah.
like almost like in their aura, but even more expansive than that. And he was able to see like where there was different blocks and different things that were misaligned or could be, modified.
Like is able to see like because there's like 10 different layers when we look at like energetic and spiritual layers within the body, like outside of the body.
Hmm.
So like he was able to kind of see within those different layers, think about like kind of like an aura. He's
Hmm.
probably able to see like trapped energy and such, but also remember that the soul has had many lifetimes. At least
Hmm.
that's what I believe. And so he's also probably able to see some of those things that have carried forward, right, from other lifetimes, which is beautiful.
Yeah, yeah, it was so it just makes me think about the different ways that people experience the Akashic records and the different ways that people tune into it. Like you were saying, some people might see it as an actual physical library. Some people might see it like saw it. What are some other ways that you've seen people experience it?
So sometimes for them, it's just they're getting information into their head. So they're not seeing a library or whatever. It's just they're approaching it with the intention to go into the records, whether they're saying a prayer or asking with a guided journey to like work with the records or the keepers of the records. So really it can look any way, which is pretty amazing. Maybe it's sometimes you're going to the same place in nature that's kind of in your mind, but then that information and your guides are coming through. On another podcast, I got asked a really interesting question. Somebody says like why do the Akashic records even like why would they exist? Like how do we know that they're real? Um,
Mm,
oh God, hold on, like let me pull out quantum mechanics. Like, so
hmm.
I wasn't going to go there, but what happened is I kind of explained what I believed. But then after I got off the call, Spirit kind of gave me like a better understanding. And so what I had said is that I believe there's source, so God, however you believe it, and that we
Hmm.
are each fractals of source. So
Right.
the idea is source is omnipotent, but it wants to learn about itself. And so we are each fractals and we're here to learn different things, right?
Hmm.
And so as we learn in the different souls, we're learning all these different lessons and source is learning about itself, right?
Hmm.
And so the Akashic records are the historical of everything it's learned.
Hmm.
And so when I had gotten off the podcast, basically Spirit said to me, like, you should have asked her, do you have photo books? Do you have photo albums?
Mm,
The idea is like we have photo albums so we can go back and remember the things that have happened in our life, as well as what we've learned, places we've been, things like that. And they were giving me that example if that's what the Akashic records are for source, but then also for our individual souls. And I just
hmm.
thought that was super cool because it's like, oh, okay, so there are records of like what we're here to do. Again, that is big picture, but I just thought it was so cool. Is like, oh, you're comparing, an energetic database of anything that ever has and will exist to photo books. Cool, 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 cool.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's a great way to look at it, and I love that. And it makes me think about, I don't recall where I heard this. I believe it was on a show on Gaia where they talked about the Akashic records, and basically what I heard on there was that the Akashic records we're tuning into now only go back like 8 million years or something like that. And that there was something that happened where the information before that was either like in a different place or it was wiped out or something like that. Have you heard anything like that before?
Not to that degree, but also that like you have Akashic records for Earth, but then there are obviously galactic, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're galactic, meaning not just on Earth, right? We have everything in our universe as well.
Mm-hmm.
So interestingly, the name of my business is Alcyon Akasha. Akasha meaning Akashic Records, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't know what I was going to call my business. I knew I wanted Akashic or something in there. And so I had basically told Spirit, it's like a little game I like to play. I want to, like the astrology is right. I need to go ahead and just pull the trigger and get this LLC. I need a name. But everything that I had looked at, like alchemy and like all the things that kind of called to me were already taken.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm driving down to South Georgia, going down to Florida to visit my family, and they bring through this word. I actually see the word. It's Alcyone. And I'm like, I don't even know what it is, but I'll take it. Because like at this point, I kind of had like been like, it's on you. We're about 30 minutes out. I'm about to stop and register this LLC. But afterwards, I look up what the word means. I know I had seen it kind of before. It's a star in the Taurus cluster, which is in the Pleiades. It's the brightest star in the Pleiades. But
Mm.
also, Alcyone apparently is obviously it has like Greek and Roman, myth heritage as far as who Alcyone was.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, it's supposedly an energetic spot where there is a manifestation of the Akashic records. I didn't know that.
Mm.
I already registered the name and was like, okay, at this point, I'm just going to go with it. But I found that out afterwards. And I was like, that's so crazy because it's like they brought me this word. I'm like, I'll take it. I know it's a star, good enough. But then I find out all this history on the back end. So I'm like, mysterious ways.
Okay, so if I'm hearing you right, it's a actual physical location where the Akashic records, at least part of
That
them, are stored.
Yeah, like I don't know if it's physical or it's like an energetic space with it. I don't know, like big picture. Again, that's going to be really far in the sliding scale of woo.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, it was just interesting how that came together. And so if you go to my website, it's alcyoniakasha.com. So any business person will tell you that is the worst name ever because nobody knows either of those words. Like, how the heck do you even spell that?
Right.
And so my name, Stephanie Nicole Potter, is also my website. You can go to
Mm.
that. But I'm not pitching myself. But what I'm saying is kind of the message that came through to me is like, we want you to start talking about the Akashic Records. It's
Mm-hmm.
about people understanding that they can access it, that they can use it, what it is, and then just bringing them more modern, right? How do we get modern advice from such a historic source?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of what I wanted to do. So that's why I kept the name and have the website as well. But it's more about how do people learn more about the Akashic Records, which is what you've given me the opportunity to do here. So thank you.
Yeah, of course. And I'd love to include any of your links in the description. So we'll drop all that. And any, people can visit your website and sign up to work with you and all those kind of things. So thank you so much for coming on today, Stephanie. It's been such an honor to have you. And we really, I really appreciated all the knowledge and all the beautiful information you shared with us today. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm honored myself and just a pleasure to be here. And yeah, we went all over the place. So I'm grateful.
Yeah, it was awesome. So until next time, take care.